STALKER 2's Update 2.0 is now only a short while away from its August 20th, 2026 release date. We've already talked about what Cost of Hope is bringing to the table, but the free update that accompanies the DLC is substantial enough to warrant its own deep dive. From major visual changes to the zone, improvements to the A-Life system, new gameplay mechanics, and of course, new weapons, gear, and loot to pick up and customize your build with, there is a lot to unpack with this one. So without further ado, let's dive right in. The zone's new visuals. If you've seen any recent trailers for the expansion or the update, you've probably noticed that the zone's looking much better than it's ever been. And that's courtesy of major improvements to the overall lighting and exposure, designed to work as well indoor and underground areas as they do outdoors. Of course, the shadows and reflections that come with that improved lighting have also been made to look more natural and respond realistically to rays of light now. In a game where atmosphere forms a major part of the experience, this is a change that's probably going to make a difference within a while of you hopping back into the zone, irrespective of whether you've been away for a while or rigorously coming back to it to maintain your control over that land. Well, lighting up the world with your presence is going to be even better now, and it's a welcome change to accompany the expansion's debut if you're diving into it right off the bat. Significantly reworked foliage and terrain. It wouldn't do to have the rays of light glancing ever so naturally off of foliage and textures that aren't good enough to work in tandem with them to present a realistic scene, now would it? Well, thankfully, that isn't the case with Update 2.0, with environments, terrain, and foliage getting a major overhaul that transforms formerly barren areas of the zone into lush landscapes that look and feel entirely different to engage with as a result. This overhaul isn't just about adding more grass to the areas, but changes the scenes they're presenting enough to make them seem new. Fog as a gameplay mechanic. Among the more interesting additions that the update is bringing to the table is the new twist that fog in the game isn't purely cosmetic anymore, but is actively going to influence your success or failure as you engage with the zone. It's going to make it harder for you to see and hear your enemies, with the opposite holding true as well. For those of you who share our passion for taking as stealthy an approach as possible while we're in the zone, this is an immediate change to how we're going to be approaching situations, taking advantage of new opportunities that open up thanks to being less visible and audible to our foes. However, that doesn't mean we don't see situations where visibility isn't going to influence gunfights for those of you who do like to shoot first and ask questions later. A more active A-Life system. The source and sustenance of the zone's particular brand of chaos has been quite entertaining after the game's rough patches were ironed out since its release. There are more meeting points and contested areas between NPCs and mutants, including, but not limited to, campfires and bus stops. That's an immediate bump to the possibilities that can unfold during your moment-to-moment gameplay, and of course, an exponential increase to how things can change because of them. The developers have been careful to make these unscripted activities more believable from what we're seeing in the trailers, and it's a great way to further integrate a system that's central to the game's identity into the stage upon which the experience unfolds. More A-Life is always welcome in the zone, and for good reason. Refinements to NPC behavior and A-Life issues. A more active A-Life system is being joined by improvements to what it does, with changes to NPC looting already showcased in the trailer. That's being joined by improvements to enemy behavior when they're shooting or throwing stuff around walls, and fixes to areas being overpopulated in comparison to the ones surrounding them. The underlying principle has always been to make the whole thing feel more like a dynamically unfolding world that's responding to your presence in it rather than a simulation. What's on display so far looks like a fine version of a system that's been steadily improving ever since the game was first in our hands, and this feels like another milestone in a journey we've taken with the developers as far as it's concerned. A-Life happens, we guess. More environmental variety for mutants. Making the zone all the more immersive is the new appearances for mutants like bloodsuckers and fleshes based on their habitats. New mutant subspecies and variations were already highlighted in trailers, and while we're not expecting entirely new species of mutants unless GSC actually says they're part of the update, we are expecting what's on offer to feel different enough from each other and past versions to make the mutant population feel more varied. It's always good to see familiar enemies get more variety, as it gives the impression of a well-executed world that blends realism and engaging mechanics, which has always been one of STALKER 2's greatest strengths. 3 types of binoculars. We are very eager to try out binoculars, a feature we think should have made it into the game a long time ago. Still, like they say, it's better late than never. Different variations can come with functionality for scouting, hunting down targets, or when you're trying to thin the crowd before starting an encounter. The features you can use vary between models, and they can either be found in the zone or purchased from select traders. Binoculars are going to bring a layer of tactical thinking to a game that does rely on slower, reconnaissance-heavy gameplay. Or at least that's how we take things in the zone, and we're happy to have more tools that make that style of taking on its dangers more viable and effective too. New weapons expand your arsenal. The Arev Assault Rifle, GP3A, and SKP designated marksman rifles, and Fora 230 SMG are excellent tools with which taking the fight to your enemies, mutant or human, become an enjoyable flurry of bullets before you find yourself alone on the battlefield. We're particularly happy with how well they seem to expand your arsenal, fitting well within existing builds to be useful right off the bat. Given how each of the game's guns manages to feel distinct in our hands, getting 4 new ones to play with is definitely a welcome part of the update, and is one that we're going to be engaging with a lot. We're especially curious about that hidden variant waiting for us to find it somewhere out there in the zone. New scopes and expanded offset aiming. Of course, those new guns are going to be useless if their bullets don't meet their marks, but STALKER 2's got you covered there in this new update. There's a new 3x optic for Western Bloc weapons, a new red dot sight for Eastern Bloc ones, while offset aiming is finally expanding beyond NVG usage. That's an immediate bump to the customizability of your weapons, allowing you to tailor your kit to suit the specific way you use it when you're out in the zone. We're especially pleased with how much flexibility it could potentially allow for configuring our rifles to do the jobs that we want them to. Tinkering with our weapons looks like it could take up quite a chunk of our weekend once that update 2.0 drops. Custom rules to change how you play. A bunch of tweaks to how the game presents its challenges to you are another welcome part of what the update's adding. You get individual parameters to switch around, creating anything from a more forgiving time with just surviving in the zone to an experience that even the deadliest of stalkers might shy away from. The Master difficulty and optional Expedition mode are sure to find more than a few takers once they drop, thanks to them being potentially harder alternatives to the earlier updates, making this one a great reason to start a new playthrough. Or perhaps dive into Cost of Hope more organically in the process, given how the expansion's been woven into the world instead of being separate from it. A nice little bonus feature worth mentioning is the new statistics page for your PDA, which tracks your time in the zone and gives you useful information about it, which longtime fans are going to appreciate. It's a small addition, but one with a lot of meaning when you consider it a part of an update that's bringing changes to the presentation, world simulation, enemy variety, weather systems, gear, and player customization. It's a great way to bring a substantially updated version of the zone to the table alongside Cost of Hope, and we're going to be enjoying our return to the adventure and all of its chaos once it drops. We'll see you in the zone, as we're sure you're as eager as we are to dive right into it next week. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at GamingBolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.